What's up, everyone? How are you all? Today we are back with another blazing what if. What if Minato think Naruto is his brother? If you enjoy this what if, then play like, share, and do comment.
Naruto Uzumaki was running on instinct alone. Branches tore at his coat as he staggered through the forest, lungs burning, legs heavy as lead. His chakra network felt scraped raw, overused, abused, pushed far beyond what was safe. 3 months deep undercover, surrounded by enemies, lying, stealing, fighting nonstop just to survive, and now this. Of course they'd find him before he made it home. Two figures stalked him from the tree-line, never rushing, never panicking. Calm, calculated. Both dressed head to toe in dull brown, like they wanted to blend into the earth itself. One moved stiffly, experience etched into every step. The other was younger, sharper, eyes cold with confidence. Not bandits. Not missing mean amateurs. Naruto twisted and hurled steel on reflex. Kunai clashed midair as fire roared past his shoulder, scorching bark and leaves behind him. He rolled, barely avoiding a surge of earth that erupted where he'd stood a heartbeat earlier. Too slow. The ground behind him exploded upward. A massive earthen construct slammed into his back, crushing the air from his lungs and hurling him into a tree with bone-rattling force. The trunk cracked. Naruto slid down, coughing hard as blood splattered the roots beneath him. His vision swam. Asterisk move. Get up. If you stop, you die. Asterisk. He forced himself upright, legs shaking violently. His body screamed for rest, but there was nothing left to give. His own chakra was almost gone, scraped down to fumes after weeks of constant combat. The two shinobi approached, hands already weaving signs. Naruto clenched his fists. Asterisk, damn it. I didn't want to rely on that again. Asterisk. There was no choice. He reached inward, past the pain, past exhaustion, toward the vast, burning presence coiled behind the seal. Heat flooded his veins, violent and overwhelming. Crimson chakra tore free, wrapping around him like living fire. The air screamed. A Rasengan formed in his palm. Not the familiar blue, but something feral, unstable, spinning with raw malice. He hurled it forward just as lightning tore through the clearing. The two techniques collided. For a fraction of a second, the world froze. Then everything went wrong. The clash didn't explode, it collapsed. Energy twisted inward, forming a screaming sphere of light that devoured sound and space alike. The forest warped. Trees were shredded into dust. The shockwave tore Naruto off his feet and slammed him into the ground again and again as lightning ripped through his body. Pain-drowned thought. As consciousness slipped away, Naruto's blurred vision caught one last impossible sight. The two attackers reaching for each other as their bodies fractured, breaking apart into drifting, multicolored ash that scattered on the wind. Then darkness swallowed him whole. The forest was quiet when the Leaf Patrol arrived. For shinobi moved swiftly through the trees, 3 Chunin flanking their Jonin leader as they returned from a routine mission. They froze when a flash of unnatural light flared in the distance. The captain raised a fist. Change of plans. They reached the clearing and stopped cold. At the center lay a crater soaked in red. A single body rested within it, torn clothing barely holding together, blood pooled beneath him like a shadow. The Jonin was already kneeling, fingers pressed to the stranger's neck. There's a pulse, he said sharply. Weak, but he's alive. No one argued. They moved fast, lifting the broken body with care and sprinting toward the village gates. None of them noticed the faint spiral hidden beneath the blood and grime. None of them questioned why the stranger's face stirred something uncomfortably familiar in their minds. Survival came first. The hospital doors flew open. Medics scattered as the team rushed in, shouting for emergency assistance. Tsunade looked up from her desk and went rigid. So much blood. She was already moving before anyone spoke, hands steady as she checked the patient herself. Alive. Barely. Too young. Far too young. Her jaw tightened. Get him into surgery. Now. They obeyed without question. As the doors slammed shut and machines began to hum, Tsunade stared at the unconscious boy on the table. Something about him tugged at her instincts. Something wrong. Something familiar. Something dangerous. Outside the room, unseen by anyone, the seal on his stomach pulsed once. And somewhere deep within Naruto Uzumaki's mind, something ancient stirred, awake, amused, and waiting. The operating room was silent except for the slow, steady beeping of medical equipment. Tsunade stood over the unconscious boy, arms folded, eyes sharp but unsettled. She had seen miracles before, had performed them, but this was different. This wasn't just advanced healing or rare vitality. This was wrong. Her chakra-infused hands had barely begun their work when torn muscle knit itself together beneath her palms. Deep gashes sealed as if time itself had been forced to rewind. Blood loss that should have ended a life hours earlier had simply stopped matching. No human body recovers like this, she thought grimly. The boy lay still now, chest rising evenly, skin pale beneath dried crimson stains. He was stable, but utterly drained, chakra pathways scorched, organs stressed to their limit. Even with his abnormal recovery rate, he wouldn't be waking anytime soon. At least a week. Maybe more. And yet, Tsunade couldn't shake the unease crawling up her spine. She studied his face again. The hair, the bone structure, the angle of the jaw. Too familiar. Damn it. The door creaked open behind her. You wanted to see me, princess? The voice was unmistakable. Tsunade didn't turn. Her fist did. The impact echoed through the corridor as Jiraiya was sent flying backward, crashing hard into the wall. Dust rained down as he groaned and slid to the floor. When he stood, rubbing his jaw, her glare promised far worse if he spoke another word out of place. Several tense seconds passed before Tsunade exhaled and reined in her temper. I didn't call you here for nonsense, she said coldly. Come with me. Jiraiya followed, unusually quiet, as she led him down the hall and into a private recovery room. The moment his eyes landed on the patient, he stopped dead, his breath caught. For a heartbeat, just one, he thought he was staring at a ghost. Blonde hair, wild even in sleep. The same coloring, the same presence that tugged at something old and buried in his chest. Then he noticed the whisker-like marks on the boy's cheeks. That's not possible, Jiraiya whispered. Tsunade watched his reaction closely. You see it too, she said. I thought I was imagining it. But the resemblance is structural, bone, skin, facial ratios. Genetics don't lie. Jiraiya swallowed hard, eyes never leaving the bed. Minato. It was all there. Enough to hurt. Have you confirmed it? He asked finally, forcing himself to think like a shinobi instead of a man drowning in memory. Not yet, Tsunade replied. I need Minato's consent to run a proper comparison. She reached out, almost unconsciously, brushing the boy's hair back with the back of her fingers. So you called me? Jiraiya asked, frowning. Why not just tell Minato yourself? Tsunade straightened, her expression unreadable. Because if I'm wrong, I don't want to be the one who breaks him, she said quietly. And if I'm right, he deserves to hear it from you. Jiraiya closed his eyes briefly. I'll go. He didn't use the door. Minato stood beside the hospital bed in silence. Jiraiya's words echoed in his mind, refusing to settle into anything believable. He had chased shadows for years. False leads, broken hopes, empty records. He had learned not to expect miracles. And yet, he looked down at the unconscious boy. So young, too young to carry such scars. Bandages wrapped around his torso, arms, legs, evidence of a battle that should have killed him. Minato felt something twist painfully in his chest. Happiness, fear, grief, hope. Who are you? He murmured. As if in response, the boy's brow twitched. The heart monitor spiked, just for a moment. And deep beneath layers of seals and sleeping consciousness, something ancient opened one eye and smiled. Rain tapped softly against the window of Minato's apartment as lamplight pooled across the worn pages in his hands. He had read the book countless times, yet his fingers still traced the margins as if the words might change if he looked closely enough. The window slid open behind him. "You know," drawled Jiraiya, landing with practiced ease. "Most people don't reread their teacher's work this obsessively." Minato glanced up, smiling faintly. Some stories are worth returning to. He closed the book partway, the title catching the light before he set it aside. Jiraiya lingered instead of joking further. That alone set Minato on edge. "There's something I need you to see," the Sannin said at last. "I won't dress it up. It's strange." Minato studied him, skepticism warring with a flicker of curiosity. "You're serious?" "For once," Jiraiya replied. "Come on." Minato followed, still unconvinced, but unable to ignore the strange weight pressing into his chest. In flashback, the present felt heavier. Minato stood at the foot of the hospital bed, staring down at the boy whose breathing had already steadied beyond expectation. Bandages remained, but beneath them the body looked whole. Too whole. His mind raced, trying to impose logic where none fit. This wasn't coincidence. "This doesn't make sense," Minato murmured. "If he was injured that badly, there should be signs, scarring, residual trauma. Something." "He had them," Tsunade replied, arms crossed. "This morning." She didn't hide the disbelief in her voice. "Deep lacerations. Internal bleeding. Nerve damage consistent with lightning-based techniques. I spent an hour just keeping him alive." Minato's gaze snapped back to the boy. "Then where did they go?" "That's the problem," Tsunade said. "They didn't go anywhere. His body corrected them." Jiraiya let out a low whistle. "That kind of recovery rate shouldn't exist. Not even with your help." "And yet," Tsunade continued, eyes sharp, "his chakra network is already refilling. Not slowly. Rapidly. Like a reservoir that was temporarily capped." Minato's hands clenched at his sides. "How large?" he asked quietly. Tsunade hesitated. "Larger than any civilian. Larger than most shinobi. Larger than—" She stopped herself, then finished evenly. "Than anything I've personally treated." Silence swallowed the room. Minato stepped closer, his shadow falling across the bed. The boy's face was calm in sleep, lashes dark against pale skin. Those strange markings on his cheeks stood out now that the blood was gone. Unusual, almost symbolic. "What's his name?" Minato asked. "We don't know," Jiraiya answered. "No identification. No papers. He was found just outside the southern perimeter." Minato's breath hitched. "That's where He stopped, shaking his head. "Never mind." Tsunade broke the quiet. "Minato, I won't move forward without your consent. But I believe you already know my question." He didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "Do the test." Blood samples were taken swiftly, efficient, clinical. Tsunade sent them off with a priority seal that would wake half the lab if necessary. As the door closed behind the nurse, Minato remained by the bedside. Jiraiya rested a hand on his former student's shoulder. "Whatever comes back, you're not alone." Minato nodded, but his eyes never left the boy. Minutes passed. Then, the heart monitor spiked. A sharp inhale cut through the room as the boy's fingers twitched, curling weakly into the sheets. Chakra stirred, thick and heavy, pressing outward like a tide testing its boundaries. Tsunade stepped forward instantly. "He's not supposed to wake up yet." The boy's brow furrowed, and then his eyes snapped open. A flash of blue, too vivid, too aware, locked onto Minato's face. For one suspended heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then the lights flickered. Somewhere deep within the hospital, a sealed container shattered, and the test results began to print. The envelope sat unopened on the small metal table, its weight far heavier than paper had any right to be. Nearly a full day had passed since the samples were sent off. Nearly a full day of waiting, watching machines hum and rise and fall with the steady rhythm of a stranger's breathing. Naruto hadn't stirred once, still locked in deep unconsciousness, chakra calm, yet dense, like a sleeping storm. Tsunade stood beside the bed, arms folded, jaw tight. She hated waiting. She had called them all. Minato, Jiraiya, and even the old man himself. If this result was what she suspected, no one deserved to hear it secondhand. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Finally, Minato muttered as he pushed through the door with far less composure than usual. Jiraiya and Sarutobi followed at a slower pace, eyes already drifting to the boy on the bed. Sarutobi stopped short. "You weren't exaggerating," he said quietly. "That resemblance is unsettling." Minato didn't respond. He was already standing too close to the bed, eyes fixed on the boy's face as if afraid it might vanish if he blinked. Tsunade reached for the envelope. "All right," she said. "No more guessing." She broke the seal and pulled out the report. The room fell silent. Page 1, baseline markers. Compatibility indicators. Tsunade's lips twitched, pleased. Page 2, chromosomal alignment. Her expression sharpened. Page 3, familial probability ratios. Her eyes widened just a fraction. By the final page, she was smiling. Not a friendly smile. A dangerous one. Minato noticed immediately. "Tsunade," he said, voice tight. "Just say it." She lowered the papers and looked straight at him. "It's confirmed," she said. "Shared lineage. Near identical hereditary markers." She paused deliberately, accounting for age and divergence. She tilted her head. "He's your brother." The words hit harder than any jutsu ever had. Minato's breath left him in a shaky exhale. "My brother?" His knees felt weak. His chest hurt. Everything inside him fractured and reformed all at once. Joy slammed into disbelief. Relief tangled with grief for all the years lost. He stared at the unconscious boy like he was seeing color for the first time. "I have a brother," Minato whispered, as if saying it too loudly might undo it. Jiraiya's shock lasted only a moment before something darker crept into his eyes. Timing, circumstances, power. Too many unanswered questions. Still, he said nothing. For now. Sarutobi removed his pipe slowly, studying Tsunade with a hard, searching look. "We searched for years," he said. "All of us did. And now he appears like this?" "I know what you're thinking," Tsunade replied calmly. "But the science doesn't lie." Minato stepped back, running a hand through his hair, laughter bubbling up only to die in his throat. "When he wakes up," he began, then stopped. He didn't even know how to finish that sentence. "When he wakes up," Tsunade said, softer now, "you'll talk to him. Until then, he stays under observation." She glanced at the sleeping blonde, then smirked. "You can stay if you want. I doubt you're going anywhere." Minato didn't answer. He just sat down beside the bed. Unseen by any of them, Naruto's fingers curled faintly around the blanket. And deep within him, something old and watchful stirred, aware now that the truth had finally surfaced, and that nothing would ever be simple again. Minato hadn't moved from the chair in 2 days. Not for long, at least. He'd slept sitting upright, spine protesting, neck stiff, but he hadn't cared. Every time the boy's breathing shifted, every twitch of fingers or brow, Minato had been awake instantly, watchful, waiting to not be alone. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and clean linen. Noon light filtered through the window in soft bands, dust floating lazily in the air. Tsunade had just finished another examination, muttering about pain management and accelerated recovery before heading out to fetch medication. "It won't be long now," she'd said. "He'll feel it when he wakes." Minato had nodded, eyes never leaving the bed. And then, movement. Subtle, almost imagined. The boy's fingers curled, nails scraping lightly against the sheets. His brow creased, lips parting as a low, rough groan escaped him. Minato leaned forward instantly. Naruto surfaced from darkness wrapped in pain. Everything hurt, head pounding, muscles screaming, nerves still buzzing as if lightning hadn't fully left his body. His first coherent thought was confusion. "I should be dead." Then smell. Sound. Familiar beeping. Hospital. His eyes cracked open, vision blurring before slowly sharpening. White walls. Medical equipment. Konoha insignia. Relief flooded him. They found me. He exhaled and let his tense muscles relax, only to freeze when a voice spoke from his side. Was about time you woke up. Naruto stiffened. Minato tried to keep his tone light, friendly, even cheerful, but inside his heart was racing. He saw the instant tension ripple through the younger blonde's body and raised his hands slightly, non-threatening. I've been hoping you'd wake up, Minato continued softly. Didn't want you opening your eyes alone. Naruto turned his head slowly. Clear blue eyes met clear blue eyes. For a moment, the world tilted. That face. Panic flared. Isn't that? No. He's alive. Too young. This makes no sense. Am I dead? His body answered immediately with a spike of pain. Okay. Not dead. Fox. Now would be a great time. Laughter rolled through his mind, deep and mocking. About time you noticed, brat. Naruto swallowed. Kyubi? Oh yes. Very much alive. Unfortunately for your nerves. Am I dead? He asked again, desperate. Hardly, the fox snorted. You're in the past. Before he becomes Hokage. Don't ask me how. Chakra backlash, spatial interference, my power mixing with lightning. Take your pick. What matters is this. The man beside you thinks you're his brother. Naruto's mind blanked. What? And before you panic, the fox continued lazily. Play along. Unless you enjoy paradoxes and getting dissected by very curious humans. Naruto's heart hammered. Brothers? How am I supposed to? Minato cleared his throat gently. Hey, you okay? Naruto flinched back into the moment and forced a small, awkward grin. Why yeah? Just my head's killing me. His voice came out hoarse and used. Still alive. Still breathing. Minato visibly relaxed. Good. Tsunade said you might be in pain. Naruto studied him more carefully now. Up close, it was worse. Same hair color. Same eyes. Similar posture. The resemblance was unsettling. I'm Minato, the man said after a pause. What's your name? Naruto opened his mouth. Don't, the fox warned instantly. Use something else. You're a Namikaze here, remember? Naruto swallowed. Naroyu, he said slowly. Namikaze Naroyu. The name felt strange on his tongue. Minato froze. Not dramatically, not obviously, but Naruto saw it. The way Minato's breath caught. The way his eyes softened with something dangerously close to hope. I thought so. Minato murmured, more to himself than aloud. He smiled, wide, genuine, and trembling just a little. Do you have any family? Anyone at all? Naruto hesitated, then shook his head. Not that I know of. I've been on my own for a long time. That part wasn't entirely a lie. I travel, Naruto added. No village. Never really had one. Minato nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I'm 20, Minato said in return. A Jonin here. I train a Genin team. He hesitated, then met Naruto's eyes directly. And apparently, I have a brother. Naruto's stomach flipped. I'm Namikaze Minato, he continued carefully. The test confirmed it. I'm your older brother. Silence stretched. Naruto stared at him. Not in disbelief, not in fear, but in quiet, stunned analysis. The fox had warned him. Tsunade had confirmed it. And yet hearing it aloud made it heavier. If this is true here, then it was always true. How do you know? Naruto asked finally, keeping his voice steady. That we're related? Minato exhaled, relieved at the calm question. Blood analysis. Gene alignment. Tsunade doesn't make mistakes. Naruto nodded slowly. Inside his mind, the fox grinned. Well, kid, Kyubi said. What are you going to do now? Naruto looked at Minato again. Really looked at him. Nervous. Hopeful. Afraid of pushing too hard. Someone who didn't want to lose another family member he'd just found. Naruto took a breath. I guess, he said carefully, I'd like to know you. Minato's smile widened, just as the door creaked open behind them. And Tsunade stepped back into the room, her expression sharp, just as Naruto's chakra spiked violently for a single, uncontrollable second. Enough to make every seal in the room shudder. Enough to make Tsunade stop dead in her tracks. The fox's presence pressed closer to Naruto's thoughts, heavier than before. The QB muttered, tone unusually thoughtful. For humans to reach that conclusion, these tests must be extremely precise. Naruto frowned internally. What are you getting at? There was a pause, then realization. TCH. How annoying. The fox clicked his tongue. I should have noticed sooner. Noticed what? Naruto demanded, irritation rising. The fox never stopped mid-thought unless something important had clicked into place, and that never boded well. Before the QB could elaborate, Minato spoke again, gently pulling Naruto's attention back to the room. We, took a blood sample while you were unconscious, Minato said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. I hope that's okay. Naruto blinked. He didn't feel angry. If anything, relief washed over him. Proof. Something concrete. Family. The word felt strange. Heavy. Almost fragile. He lowered his gaze to the blanket, lips curving into a small, honest smile he didn't even realize he was forming. I'm glad, he said quietly. Minato saw it, and something in his chest loosened. So am I, Minato replied, standing up. You have no idea how long I've been looking. Before Naruto could react, Minato leaned in and wrapped his arms around him. Naruto stiffened for half a second. Then, slowly, he returned the hug. It was awkward, careful, real, a connection forming without either of them fully understanding what it meant yet. The door slid open. Tsunade stepped back inside, a small tray in hand. She stopped short when she saw them, surprise flashing across her face, then softening into something warmer. Her eyes flicked to Naruto's face. Those eyes, deep, vivid blue, just like Minato's. The two blondes separated quickly, Naruto suddenly aware of himself, of where he was, of who had just walked in. The fox's voice cut in instantly. Careful, Kit. You don't know anyone here yet. Don't slip. Right, Naruto swallowed. Thanks. He looked up, scratching his cheek awkwardly. So who's this? He asked, nodding towards Tsunade, deliberately vague. Minato smiled, catching on instantly. This is Lady Tsunade. She's your doctor. Tsunade stepped forward, clearly relieved he hadn't said anything too familiar. Well, she said briskly, masking her curiosity. Since you're awake, we'll do a quick check. Naruto nodded. Name? Namikaze Naruto. Age? 17. And where are you from? Naruto hesitated only a moment. I travel. I don't really live anywhere. Tsunade paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Namikaze. That surname had yielded nothing in village records. No registry. No lineage files. Nothing. So that's why, she realized. He was never tied to a village. She nodded and continued. Any allergies? Medical conditions? Naruto's heart skipped. Condition. For a fraction of a second, panic spiked, enough that the heart monitor chirped sharply. Tsunade noticed immediately. So did Minato. Naruto forced himself to breathe. No, he said quickly. Nothing you need to know. It wasn't exactly a lie. Just postponed truth. Tsunade studied him carefully, then chose to let it go. Whatever he was hiding, now wasn't the time. He was overwhelmed enough as it was. She handed him the painkillers. These will help. And sign this. You'll be discharged when I clear you. Naruto signed carefully, in Naruto. As he swallowed the medication, a dull ache throbbed behind his eyes, not just from injuries, but from everything else. Past, future, family, time. His life had already changed, and he had the unsettling feeling this was only the beginning. A full week passed before Naruto was finally allowed to leave the hospital. The moment Tsunade cleared him, he vanished into the village streets with purpose. His old clothes were unsalvageable, burnt, torn, soaked through with memories he didn't want clinging to him anymore. And there was no way he was wearing the standard shinobi blues of this era. Too noticeable. Too wrong. He chose darker colors instead. Practical. Anonymous. A short-sleeved black shirt that didn't restrict movement. Dark green cargo pants with deep pockets. Fresh bandages wrapped around his wrists and palms, leaving his fingers free. Functional. Familiar. He avoided orange almost entirely. Almost. The necklace was the exception, an Uzumaki spiral carved from orange stone, resting against his chest. A quiet rebellion. A reminder of who he was, and who he wasn't supposed to be here. He was painfully grateful he'd left everything identifiable behind before the mission: headbands, documents, spare seals, anything that could trace him back to his real life. Walking around without a forehead protector felt wrong, his hair constantly falling into his eyes, but it was safer this way. Safer for the future. The village, however, was not quiet. News traveled fast in Konoha, especially when it involved Minato Namikaze, a younger brother, appearing out of nowhere, surviving injuries that should have killed him. People whispered. Naruto, kept indoors. Minato's apartment became his refuge, though he never fully shook the feeling that he was intruding. Family was unfamiliar. The shared space, the casual concern, the simple act of someone asking if he'd eaten, it all felt unreal. Minato never pressured him, never pried. But Naruto noticed things. The way Minato watched him when he thought Naruto wasn't looking. The way his eyes lingered when Naruto flinched at certain words. The patience, almost deliberate, like he was waiting for Naruto to decide something on his own. Minato returned home late that evening. Training had gone smoothly, but the day carried weight. One of his students was missing forever now. Obito's name had been added to the stone, carved alongside too many others. The visit had been silent, heavy with what-ifs and regrets. When Minato opened the door, he found Naruto asleep on the couch, curled slightly inward, guarded, even in rest. Minato sighed softly. He's exhausted, he thought. Physically, and in ways he doesn't even realize yet. He draped a blanket over him, careful not to wake him. As he straightened, his gaze caught on the bandages, the necklace, the tension still present in Naruto's posture even while sleeping. He's hiding something, Minato acknowledged again. That moment in the hospital hadn't left him. The spike in heart rate, the fear when Tsunade said condition. Whatever it was, it ran deep. Minato decided not to push. Not yet. He left quietly. Jiraiya had requested a meeting, urgent, apparently. The kind of tone that meant things were already moving behind the scenes. Naruto woke later to warmth and quiet. The blanket told him everything. He smiled faintly. Minato wasn't a bad man. Naruto knew that now, had probably always known it, somewhere deep down. Whatever choices Minato had made in the future, they weren't cruel ones. Just desperate. Trusting. Naruto didn't blame him. If Minato had known what sealing the fox would cost him, what kind of childhood Naruto would live through, he would have torn the world apart. That much Naruto believed without question. He stretched carefully, joints still stiff, then sat up. His mind drifted, unwanted but persistent. Father? Brother? The blood test still echoed in his thoughts. Kyubi had explained it bluntly. Genetic similarity that high could mean either brother or son. The difference lay in maternal markers, genes Minato wouldn't carry. Naruto hoped they never looked too closely. The fox had also been unsettled. It disturbed Naruto more than he liked to admit. Kyubi was still sealed inside him. Here, in this time. Yet he couldn't sense his other self. No echo. No resonance. Nothing. That wasn't normal. And the fox hadn't told him everything. Naruto could feel it. He grabbed a glass of water, drinking slowly. Training itched in his bones, but he stayed inside. Too many eyes outside. Too many questions he couldn't afford to answer wrong. Eventually, he sat back down on the couch. One step at a time, he told himself. He let his eyes close again. Far from the apartment, deep beneath the village, a sealed chamber pulsed faintly. Ancient markings flickered once, then went still. And somewhere beyond time's careful balance, something began to notice that a piece had moved where it never should have been. The ripple had already started. Naruto just hadn't felt it yet. Minato walked home beneath a sky already darkened by late evening, hands tucked into his pockets, thoughts refusing to settle. Jiraiya's words echoed far too loudly. No records, no identification. Appears injured beyond survival. Carries money and weapons, but no allegiance. Minato clenched his jaw. No, he muttered under his breath. That doesn't make him a spy. But doubt was a dangerous thing. Once planted, it took root quickly. Jiraiya hadn't accused Naruto outright, only warned him to be cautious, to observe, to learn who the boy really was before trusting him fully. Minato understood the logic, even if he hated it. The timing was strange. The circumstances stranger still. A shinobi appearing near Konoha, drenched in blood, powerful beyond reason, with no village ties, and yet claiming the Namake's name. If Minato pushed too hard, Naruto might leave. And Minato couldn't bear that thought. When he entered the apartment, the quiet greeted him first. Naruto was still asleep on the couch, breathing steady, hair falling messily across his face. For a moment, Minato simply stood there and watched. Please don't be what Jiraiya fears, he thought. He noticed the empty glass on the counter and felt a strange sense of relief. Naruto had been awake, had felt comfortable enough to move around. That mattered. Minato made a decision then. I'll learn the truth by knowing him, not interrogating him. With that resolve steadying his thoughts, Minato finally went to bed. Naruto woke to a smell so unexpected it startled him. Food. Not instant. Not street-bought. Real food. He groaned softly, neck stiff from the couch, and shuffled toward the kitchen. There, standing calmly at the stove, was Minato, apron on, sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes with an ease that felt surreal. Naruto blinked. Minato glanced over and smiled. Morning, he said simply. Hungry. Naruto's stomach answered for him with an embarrassingly loud growl. His face flushed. Maybe. Minato laughed quietly, the sound warm, and motioned him toward the table. Sit. You've got catching up to do. Naruto did as told, still trying to process the scene. A kitchen. Breakfast. Someone cooking for him. He stared at the plate placed in front of him like it might disappear. They ate together in comfortable silence at first. Naruto devoured the food before he realized how hungry he'd actually been. Minato watched with a small, fond smile, pretending not to notice. Conversation came easily after that. Naruto admitted the village felt overwhelming. Too many eyes, too many voices. Minato nodded in understanding, though part of him quietly wondered how a traveling shinobi could feel so unused to crowds. Afterward, Minato suggested a walk. Naruto agreed immediately. They moved through the streets together, Minato leading slightly ahead. Naruto felt the stares instantly, curious, speculative, cautious. Whispers followed them like shadows. So that's what this is like, Naruto thought bitterly. Being noticed for the wrong reasons. But Minato didn't let it linger. They left the village proper quickly, heading toward the forest. Naruto relaxed as the trees closed around them, the noise fading into birdsong and wind. Minato asked about Naruto's travels. Naruto answered carefully, but truthfully enough. Fire country, border towns, long roads. He spoke of places he and Jiraiya had passed through, stories woven just right so they didn't unravel under scrutiny. Minato listened intently, genuinely fascinated. He spoke in return of his childhood, the orphanage, running away, and being taken in by Jiraiya, of training, missions, and responsibility coming far too early. Naruto listened quietly, eyes soft, but without pity. That surprised Minato. Most people reacted with sympathy. Naruto didn't. Instead, he understood. They reached the forest clearing near the Hokage monument. Minato slowed and smiled. There's something I want you to see. Naruto already knew. They climbed. Standing atop the stone face, the village spread out beneath them, sunlit rooftops, winding streets, life moving in harmony. Naruto's chest tightened. So this is Konoha, before everything breaks. It was beautiful, untouched, whole. Minato watched him closely, noting the way Naruto's expression shifted, not just awe, but longing. Loss. You like it? Minato asked. Naruto nodded slowly. Yeah, a lot. For a moment, neither spoke. Far below them, the village continued on, unaware that time itself was being quietly bent. And deep within Naruto, something stirred again, uneasy, alert. The fox did not laugh this time. Kid, the QB warned softly, we're running out of time. Naruto's smile faded just slightly. Above them, unseen, a presence watched, and the past began to resist being changed. By the time evening settled over Konoha, Naruto felt like he'd been wrung dry. Dinner had helped, real food, eaten at a table, with someone who asked if he wanted seconds, but the village tour afterward had been brutal. Curious eyes, endless questions, whispers that followed wherever Minato led him. A younger brother. From nowhere. Powerful. Suspicious. He'd smiled through it. Nodded. Deflected. Survived it the same way he always had, by enduring. When Minato finally said they needed to stop by the Hokage Tower to get him officially registered, Naruto agreed without hesitation. He wanted to stay? That thought alone would have shocked his past self. They climbed the steps toward the tower, and only then did Naruto's stomach drop. The realization hit late and hard. Sarutobi Hiruzen was alive here. Breathing, walking, watching over the village with tired but kind eyes. The man who had been his closest thing to family. Naruto slowed without meaning to. A nervous smile tugged at his lips, then faltered. He won't recognize me, he reminded himself. Not here. Not like this. The truth hurt more than he expected. No one from his future would know him here. Not the old man. Not Tsunade. Not Kakashi. Not Iruka. Not Jiraiya. But they're alive, he realized suddenly. I can still know them again. That thought steadied him. Minato noticed the change, the hesitation, the distant look, and frowned slightly. You okay? Naruto snapped back to the present. Yeah, just thinking. They reached the office door. Minato spoke briefly with the secretary, who nodded and announced them inside. Naruto inhaled deeply. Get it together. Minato glanced at him, amused. You look like you're about to face an execution. Naruto huffed. Isn't the third Hokage called the God of Shinobi? Minato chuckled. He is. But he's also just an old man who likes tea and paperwork. Relax. Naruto nodded, though his heart disagreed. They stepped inside. Naruto avoided looking at the desk at first, eyes catching on scrolls, shelves, anything else. Then he forced himself to look up. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked younger than Naruto remembered. Less bent, less worn. His hair still dark, his face lined but not yet burdened by decades of loss. Power clung to him quietly, effortlessly. Naruto's chest tightened. The third studied him in return, sharp, observant, noticing everything. Especially the tension. Especially the resemblance. Minato spoke easily. You wanted to see us, Hokage-sama. Yes, Sarutobi replied. His gaze shifted to Naruto. Naruya-san. You wish to remain in Konoha. Naruto clenched his fist in his pocket, grounding himself. Yes, he said. I've never really belonged anywhere before. I'd like to try. The words were honest. Painfully so. Sarutobi smiled gently. Then we'll do this properly. There will be a 1-month trial period. Observation. Orientation. Trust is earned, after all. Naruto nodded. I understand. Good, the Hokage said. Now, what rank would you say you are? Naruto hesitated. In truth, his official rank was laughable compared to what he'd survived. But claiming anything outright felt wrong. I'm not sure, he admitted. I haven't tested myself in a long time. Sarutobi's brows rose slightly, surprised, but impressed. Then we'll test you, he decided. In 3 weeks. Before you're formally placed. Naruto bowed his head slightly. Thank you. The Hokage waved them off after a few more formalities, and they stepped back into the hall. Minato looked pleased, hopeful. Naruto felt steady. But deep inside, the fox shifted uneasily. Careful, kid, Kyubi murmured. Tests attract attention. Naruto's gaze hardened. Let them look. Far below the Hokage tower, unseen eyes began to take interest. And somewhere in the village records, an old seal stirred, reacting to a name that should not yet exist. Rain washed Konoha in muted gray. It clung to rooftops, soaked the streets, and whispered against the windows of Minato's apartment like a quiet warning. Minato stood near the balcony, arms folded, watching the village blur beneath the downpour. 3 weeks. That was all it had been, and somehow it felt much longer. He still didn't know his brother. Not really. Naruto was polite, cooperative, kind, even. But every question about his past slid away unanswered. Every attempt to dig deeper met a gentle deflection, a change of topic, a carefully placed smile. Minato wasn't blind. The boy was hiding something. What troubled him most wasn't the secrecy itself, but the fear behind it. At night, Naruto thrashed in his sleep. Not once, not twice. Often, Minato had set up a spare bed in his room. No guest room, no distance. He'd told himself it was practical. He knew the truth was simpler. He didn't want his brother to wake up alone. The nightmares were bad. Naruto would mutter half-formed words, breath sharp, body curled inward like he expected the world to strike him even in sleep. The fear wasn't abstract. It was specific, learned. It was the fear of someone who had survived without anyone. And that realization unsettled Minato deeply. If those dreams are memories, he thought grimly, then whatever life he lived wasn't kind. That would explain so much. The guarded trust. The reluctance to speak about himself. The way he always seemed prepared to leave. Minato rubbed his face tiredly. He wanted to help, but he couldn't help what he didn't understand. And then there was Jiraiya's voice in the back of his mind, refusing to stay quiet. Be careful. Don't ignore the signs. Minato hated that the signs existed at all. Naruto sat by the window in the other room, knees drawn up, watching the rain trace crooked paths down the glass. The week had been hard. Being here, really here, was finally sinking in. The past wasn't temporary. It wasn't a dream. This was real, and the thought terrified him. Every quiet moment gave his mind room to wander, and when it did, it always went to the same place, home. To faces he might never see again. To voices he could no longer hear. To bonds that time itself had cut away. The loneliness was sharp. Worse than physical pain. Minato's questions didn't help. Naruto knew they came from concern, not suspicion. But he also knew what Minato didn't say out loud. He could feel it in the pauses, in the careful phrasing. He's wondering what I am. Naruto wanted to tell him everything. About the fox. About the future. About the seal. But fear wrapped tight around his chest every time he tried. If Minato looked at him differently, if even once he saw Naruto as a threat instead of family, Naruto didn't think he could stay. He'd leave, no matter how much it hurt. That was why he stayed quiet. That was why he swallowed the past and carried it alone. At night, in the space between waking and sleep, Naruto spoke with the fox. Their conversations were quieter now, heavier. This timeline is wrong, the Kyubi had said bluntly. I shouldn't be here with you. Naruto had frowned. There should be another you. Yes, and yet I can't sense myself at all. That disturbed the fox more than he wanted to admit. Naruto stared at the rain, thoughts spiraling. Where's the nine tails of this era? What year is this exactly? How long until I'm born? Questions piled up with no answers. Soon, he knew, someone would start asking the same questions. And they wouldn't be as patient as Minato. Naruto closed his eyes. I'll tell him, he decided quietly. Soon. But deep beneath that resolve, the fox growled uneasily. Be careful, kid, Kyubi warned. Someone's already watching. At that exact moment, far from the apartment, a masked ANBU paused mid-step on a rain-soaked rooftop. head tilting as if sensing something wrong. And for the first time since Naruto arrived in the past, Konoha's shadows began to move. The library smelled of old paper and dust, comforting in a way Naruto hadn't expected. He moved quietly through the aisles, fingers trailing along spines until he reached the history section. He didn't really know what he was looking for. Answers, maybe, or proof that he wasn't losing his mind. Start somewhere, he told himself. Hours slipped by. Scrolls, books, records of wars, treaties, bloodlines, legends. Dates finally surfaced, anchoring him in time. He did the math twice, then a third time just to be sure. 2 years, he thought grimly. I'm not even born yet. That alone should have been enough to make his head spin. But what truly unsettled him was what wasn't there. Every Biju was documented, 1 through 8. Origins traced back to the Sage of Six Paths, fragmented myths. Old battles. But the Nine Tails? Nothing. Not a single record. Naruto froze, a book half open in his hands. Q. He murmured inwardly, unease creeping up his spine. It's like you never existed. The answer came slowly, heavily. TCH. That was all. Naruto shut the book with more force than necessary. Don't do that. You know something. Tell me. The fox exhaled, long and tired. I suspected it earlier. I just didn't want to confirm it. Naruto swallowed. Confirm what? We didn't just travel back in time, the Kyuubi said. We overrode it. Naruto's brow furrowed. How does that even? Listen. The fox snapped, then steadied himself. When that chakra collision happened, it wasn't just space that broke. Time did too. And because I was sealed inside you, the past couldn't reconcile 2 versions of me existing at once. Naruto's grip tightened on the book. So, the other me was erased, the Kyuubi said flatly, along with every memory, record, and consequence tied to my existence. Naruto felt cold. You're saying the timeline changed just so we could exist here? Yes. The silence that followed pressed in on him. Then what happens to the future I came from? Naruto asked quietly. That future is no longer guaranteed, the fox replied. This world will diverge the more you interfere. The only constant now is uncertainty. Naruto sank into a nearby chair, one knee pulled to his chest. A world where no one remembers the Nine Tails. A world where I don't exist yet. His thoughts spiraled. What if someone dies who wasn't supposed to? What if a single change erases someone before they're even born? Team 7. The rookies. People who had fought, lived, died alongside him. What if I'm the one who disappears? Enough, the Kyuubi snapped sharply. Naruto flinched. Listen to yourself, the fox growled. You sound pathetic. And that's not you. Naruto clenched his teeth. You already know what you're going to do, the Kyuubi continued. You'll survive. You'll adapt. And you'll make sure the people who matter stay alive, no matter what that costs. Naruto's breathing steadied. I really am brooding, he realized. Since when did I do that? A horrified thought followed. I'm starting to think like an Uchiha. He snorted under his breath despite himself. The fog lifted. He stood, resolve hardening in his chest. First things first, he decided. I can't keep lying. Minato had trusted him, opened his home, offered him family without hesitation. It was time Naruto returned that trust, at least part of it. Better now than later. With a determined set to his shoulders, Naruto left the library. Outside, the rain had stopped, and somewhere ahead of him waited a conversation that could change everything, for better or worse. The apartment felt heavier after dinner. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence stretching thin and uncomfortable. Naruto stared at the floor, fingers laced too tightly together. Minato noticed, but said nothing. He told himself it was just a bad day. Still, the tension set his instincts on edge. Naruto's nervous, he thought, about something specific. Minato leaned back slightly, mind drifting to his conversation with Jiraiya earlier. His former sensei had asked, carefully, almost too carefully, whether Minato had learned anything meaningful about his brother. Minato had told him what he knew: the travels, the wandering life, the lack of village ties. Jiraiya had seemed satisfied, but not convinced. That bothered Minato more than he wanted to admit. He was pulled from his thoughts when his name was spoken. Minato. He turned. Yeah. Naruto swallowed, shoulders tense. You've been asking me a lot of questions lately, and I keep dodging them. His voice wavered despite his effort to steady it. Do you still want to know? Minato studied him closely. Fear, hesitation, and beneath it, hope. I want to know, Minato said gently. But only if you want to tell me. That did it. Naruto took a slow breath, eyes fixed on his hands. When I was born, he began, something terrible happened in the village where I lived. A tragedy. People died. The whole place mourned that day. Minato stiffened slightly, but stayed silent. I was born on that same day. Naruto continued quietly. The only one born there. People connected it to me. I didn't understand it at first. I was just a kid. But I grew up alone. People avoided me. Some hated me. Others pretended I didn't exist. He paused, fist clenching. I didn't even know why until I was 12. Before that, I just knew I was blamed. Like I was the reason they were hurting. His jaw tightened. I was used as something to point at when they were angry. Minato's chest burned. Naruto looked away. When I was really young, they moved me out of the orphanage. I lived on my own. The village leader, he was the only one who bothered making sure I survived. Gave me a place. Money. That was it. Minato wanted to interrupt. Wanted to demand names, reasons, justice. But Naruto kept going. I went to the academy. There was one teacher who actually cared. He's the reason I learned anything at all. The rest either ignored me or made things harder on purpose. He let out a shaky breath. Later on, some people started acknowledging me. I even made a few friends. That, at least, brought a faint smile to his face. I left that village before I turned 13. Traveled with my sensei. And, eventually, I ended up here. Silence followed. Minato's hands trembled slightly. Anger surged through him. Hot, sharp, uncontrollable. Anger at nameless villagers. At teachers who failed a child. At a system that let something like that happen. How could anyone let a child live like that? He forced himself to breathe. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. What about your friends? Naruto's smile returned, but this time it was thin, fragile. When I was 16, the village was attacked. Destroyed. There was nothing left after. His gaze dimmed. They didn't make it. Minato closed his eyes briefly. Guilt washed over him. I pushed him to talk. Like an interrogator. Like this was a report. I'm sorry, Minato said quietly. Naruto shook his head. Don't be. My life wasn't easy, but it wasn't empty either. The people I met, they gave me something to believe in. A way to live. His eyes hardened with quiet resolve. My ninja way. Minato looked at him for a long moment, then smiled softly. I'd like to hear about that someday. Naruto glanced at the clock and stood. Maybe another time. It's late. He hesitated, then added honestly. Talking about this stuff, it's exhausting. I understand, Minato said. Naruto headed for bed, the weight in his chest lighter, but not gone. Behind him, Minato remained on the couch, staring at the wall. No spy, he thought firmly. No enemy. Just a boy who had survived too much. And somewhere deep inside Naruto, the fox stirred, watchful, uneasy. Because the truth Naruto hadn't told yet was far more dangerous than the one he just shared. Minato stared down at the pan, barely aware of the eggs sizzling beneath his chopsticks. 2 days. 2 days since that night. Since Naruto had finally trusted him with pieces of a past that no child should have carried alone. Minato felt both honored and angry every time he thought about it. Honored that his brother had chosen him. Angry that the world had failed him so completely. Naruto had been quiet yesterday. Not withdrawn, just heavy. Minato hoped today would be better. He exhaled slowly. Should I tell Jiraiya? With permission, of course. If he did, the suspicion would probably end. The spy theory would finally die. But at the same time, Minato wasn't sure Naruto was ready for that. It had clearly taken everything he had just to open up once. And there was no way Minato could explain why Jiraiya had been suspicious in the first place without hurting him. He shook his head. Why did everything feel like it balanced on a blade lately? As if that wasn't enough, Kushina still hadn't returned. Weeks now. Too long for his comfort. She was strong, stronger than most, but the silence gnawed at him. Everything's complicated, he thought grimly. Then footsteps padded into the kitchen. Minato looked up and smiled despite himself. Naruto stood there rubbing sleep from his eyes, hair sticking out in every direction, looking more like a tired teenager than a wandering shinobi with a mysterious past. He yawned, smiled, and gave a soft, genuine morning. Something in Minato's chest loosened. Morning, Minato replied warmly. Looks like you actually slept. Naruto nodded as he sat down. Yeah, for once. He inhaled deeply, the smell of breakfast making his stomach twist pleasantly. He really could get used to this, he thought. Warm food, quiet mornings, someone else awake in the house. Minato finished plating the food and joined him. They ate in easy silence, the kind that didn't demand filling. So, Minato said eventually, glancing up, any plans today? Naruto paused, chewing thoughtfully. Not really, but I don't want to stay cooped up all day again. I've got too much energy for that. He looked up. What about you? Minato hesitated, then smiled. I've got a team meeting with my genin. I was thinking you could come along. Get outside a bit. Naruto blinked. You'd really take me to meet your team? The hope in his voice was unmistakable. Minato nodded. Yeah, they could probably use some cheering up. Naruto caught the shift instantly. The smile that didn't quite reach Minato's eyes. The weight behind the words. Cheering up. His mind connected the dots faster than it should have. Sensei. Obito. He kept his expression neutral. Because of the war? He asked casually. Minato studied him for a moment, then nodded. Yeah. And losing a teammate right at the end didn't help. Naruto's chest tightened. I get that, he said quietly. Losing people changes things. Minato looked at him again, really looked at him. No pity, just understanding. It unsettled him more than suspicion ever had. Thanks, Minato said softly. They finished breakfast and headed out together. Naruto felt at the moment they stepped into the street. Eyes. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just watching. The fox stirred uneasily. They're paying closer attention now, Kyubi muttered. Someone's noticed you digging around. Naruto didn't respond, but his jaw tightened. As they moved toward the training grounds, dark clouds began gathering overhead, slow, deliberate, inevitable. And somewhere deep within Konoha, a sealed file was being pulled from an archive that hadn't been opened in years. Stamped with a single word. Jiraiya's patience was a skill few ever gave him credit for. Hours blurred together as he sat surrounded by stacks of ledgers, and registries, and travel logs gathered from across the Fire Country. Every reputable and required names. Signatures. Dates. Patterns. And yet, nothing. No Namikaze Naruto. Not once. Jiraiya leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, irritation etched deep into his face. You don't just not exist, he muttered. Not in this line of work. The boy had money, weapons, training, experience, and no trail, no sketches, no rumors, no second-hand stories from informants who always knew something. Even the underground networks had come up empty. That bothered him more than the DNA test ever could. Tsunade's results were solid. Jiraiya didn't doubt her skill. He doubted reality. Still, Minato's face came to mind. The hope there. The relief. Jiraiya exhaled slowly. If we're wrong, we destroy him. That was why he was walking toward the Hokage Tower now. Why this conversation needed to happen behind closed doors, with the third and the ANBU reports laid bare. Please let this end cleanly, he thought as he pushed open the door. Naruto didn't realize how tense he was until Training Ground 3 came into view. The sight alone hit him with a wave of memories. Running, sparring, laughing, failing. This place had shaped him. And now he was here again, out of time, watching history breathe. Minato sat down against the center post, relaxed but alert. "This is where we usually meet," he said. "They'll be here soon." Naruto nodded, scanning the field. Then she appeared. Brown hair, soft eyes, purple markings on her cheeks. Rin. She slowed when she noticed Naruto, confusion flickering across her face before politeness took over. "Hello, Minato-sensei, and your brother?" Naruto laughed lightly and bowed. "Naruto, nice to meet you." She flushed faintly. "Rin. Sorry, I didn't mean." "It's fine," Naruto said warmly. His smile lingered a fraction too long. So this is her, he thought. Before everything breaks. A ripple in the air announced Kakashi's arrival. The silver-haired boy landed silently, posture guarded. Visible eye narrowed as it immediately locked onto Naruto. Not hostile, evaluating. Sharp. Naruto felt it instantly. Yeah, Sensei always was observant. Minato clapped his hands once. "All right. Since we're all here, introductions. Name, likes, dislikes, goals. You know the drill." Kakashi didn't look away from Naruto. "That include you too?" Minato smiled. "Especially him." Naruto chuckled under his breath. "Figures." He leaned back casually. "Naruto, I like training, food that doesn't come from a cup, and quiet places. I don't like crowds or people who talk too much." His eyes flicked briefly to Kakashi. Dreams, still figuring that out. Rin smiled politely. Kakashi's eye narrowed further. Minato watched carefully. He's hiding things, Kakashi thought, but not maliciously. That unsettled him more than an obvious lie would have. Far away, in the Hokage Tower, a file slid across a desk, Yinbiyu notes neatly compiled. And in the village's unseen spaces, questions began lining up. Just as Naruto finally stepped onto the path where answers would start demanding a price. Sarutobi leaned back in his chair, pipe resting and used between his fingers as the rain tapped faintly against the Hokage Tower windows. The three Yinbiyu knelt silently before him. "Report," he said. One of them stepped forward. Subject Namikaze Naruto has followed a predictable routine. Library visits. Limited social interaction. Training observation only, no solo sessions. No attempts to access restricted areas. No suspicious chakra fluctuations beyond baseline. Jiraiya snorted. "That's exactly what bothers me." Sarutobi raised a brow. "Go on." "He's clean," Jiraiya said, irritation leaking through his calm. "Too clean. No records, no sightings, no rumors, nothing. People remember faces like his. Blonde hair, blue eyes, markings on the cheeks. Someone should have remembered him somewhere." The Yinbiyu nodded subtly. They'd run the same loops. Same dead ends. Sarutobi exhaled slowly. "And yet," he said, "you found no proof of hostile intent." "No," Jiraiya admitted. "And that's the problem." Sarutobi's gaze shifted to the window, to the village below. "Minato trusts him." Jiraiya's jaw tightened. "Minato wants to trust him." "That distinction matters," Sarutobi replied evenly. "But it does not override evidence, or the lack thereof." He turned back to the Anbu. "Continue observation. Discreetly. No provocation." "Yes, Hokage-sama." When they vanished, Jiraiya slumped into the chair opposite the desk, rubbing his face. "I hate this," he muttered. "If I'm wrong, I destroy the one thing Minato's been longing for. If I'm right." Sarutobi's eyes hardened. "Then we deal with it when truth presents itself." Training Ground 3 echoed with footfalls. Naruto jogged easily alongside Minato's students, rain-soaked earth soft beneath their sandals. He kept his pace measured, not too fast, not too slow. Enough to blend in. Kakashi noticed. Always did. The silver-haired Jonin ran with his hands in his pockets, one eye half-lidded, but his attention never truly left the blonde stranger. Naruto could feel it, the quiet assessment, the instinctive distrust. Figures, Naruto thought. Sensei was sharp even before becoming, well, Sensei. Rin kept pace on Naruto's other side, smiling lightly, clearly relieved to be doing something normal again. Naruto caught the determination in her eyes when she focused, steady, compassionate, brave. She really was like that, he realized. Always. Minato called a halt and divided them into sparring pairs, light contact only. Kakashi was paired with Naruto. Of course. Naruto almost laughed. They squared off, rain dripping from hair and lashes. Kakashi studied Naruto carefully, stance relaxed, guard loose, weight balanced. Don't hold back, Kakashi said flatly. Naruto grinned. Wasn't planning to. They moved. Fast. Naruto slipped past Kakashi's initial strike, footwork smooth but restrained. Kakashi countered instantly, forcing Naruto back with precision that screamed experience beyond his years. Naruto felt the temptation. To go faster. To hit harder. To win. He didn't. Instead, he adapted, redirecting, yielding ground, using just enough skill to keep up without revealing too much. Kakashi noticed immediately. He's limiting himself, Kakashi realized. On purpose. The exchange ended with both of them stepping back, rain steaming faintly where chakra had warmed skin. Minato watched closely, eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in awe. Well, he said after a moment. That was informative. Kakashi said nothing, but his visible eye sharpened. Naruto wiped rain from his face, heart steady but mind racing. Too close, Kyuubi warned quietly. He sees more than you think. I know, Naruto replied. But I can't look weak either. Balance. Always balance. That night, Naruto stood alone on the apartment balcony, rain long since faded into mist. The village lights flickered softly below. So many eyes watching him now. Umbu, Jiraiya, the Hokage, Kakashi, and Minato, who watched not with suspicion, but with hope. Naruto clenched the railing. I can't keep walking this line forever. Behind him, Minato paused in the doorway, having sensed rather than heard him. Naruto, he said gently. You don't have to face everything alone. Naruto didn't turn. Soon, Naruto replied quietly. I'll tell you the rest. I promise. Minato nodded, accepting that much. Neither of them noticed the faint pulse of chakra deep beneath the village, an ancient seal responding to a presence that should not exist yet. Time had been bent, and it was beginning to push back. The words didn't register at first. Minato stared at Jiraiya, the rain-damp wind of the training field suddenly cold against his skin. The sounds of the field, footsteps, breathing, distant movement, fell away, leaving only a single name echoing in his head. Kushina Uzumaki. What? Minato whispered. Jiraiya didn't soften it. He never did when it mattered. Her squad returned. One critical. It's her. Something inside Minato cracked. He turned without another word and was gone in a yellow blur, the world streaking past him as fear clawed its way into his chest. He didn't remember telling his team to stand down. Didn't remember passing Naruto. His thoughts collapsed into a single, burning need. Not her. Anyone but her. Naruto felt it. The instant Minato vanished, a sharp spike of chakra tore through the air. Panic, raw and uncontrolled. Naruto froze mid-step, eyes snapping to where his brother had stood moments ago. What happened? Rin asked quietly, sensing the shift. Naruto didn't answer. The fox stirred uneasily within him, hackles raised. That feeling, the Kyuubi muttered. Someone important is dying. Naruto swallowed. He had felt this before. Too many times. Sensei's gone. Kakashi said flatly, eyes narrowed. Something's wrong. Naruto's fists clenched. He didn't know Kushina yet. Not really. Only stories. Only echoes. But he knew what she meant to Minato. And suddenly the fragile balance Naruto had been trying so hard not to disturb felt like it was shattering anyway. So much for being careful, he thought grimly. Without waiting for permission, Naruto moved. The hospital was chaos. Medics rushed through halls slick with rainwater and blood, voices sharp and urgent. Minato skidded to a halt outside a sealed emergency room, chest heaving, eyes wild. "Where is she?" he demanded. A nurse barely looked up. "Operating room 3. Severe chakra depletion. Internal damage. We're stabilizing." Minato pressed his palm to the wall, forehead following. He had been too far away. Again, Jiraiya arrived moments later, soaked and grim, standing beside his student in silence. There was nothing comforting to say, not yet. Minutes stretched into something unbearable. Then footsteps approached. The door opened, and Tsunade stepped out, gloves stained red, expression tight but controlled. "She's alive," Tsunade said immediately. Minato sagged in relief, so sharp it nearly dropped him to his knees. "But," Tsunade continued, "she's not out of danger." Chakra exhaustion pushed her body past safe limits. "If we hadn't gotten her here when we did." She didn't finish the sentence. Minato nodded shakily. "Can I see her?" "Briefly. No talking. She needs rest." Naruto arrived just as Minato was allowed inside. He stopped short in the hallway, suddenly unsure of his place. This wasn't his time. This wasn't his life. And yet, his presence here had already changed something. He could feel it. The fox was silent now. Naruto leaned against the wall, head bowed, heart heavy. "If she dies here, if this changes everything." He didn't finish the thought. From inside the room, Minato's chakra trembled, held together by sheer will. Naruto closed his eyes. "I came here trying not to break the future," he thought bitterly. "And it's already bleeding." Somewhere deep in the village, seals shifted again. Ancient, unseen, reacting to a convergence that was never meant to happen. And Naruto Uzumaki finally understood the truth he'd been avoiding since the moment he woke up in the past. Being careful would never be enough. Because the moment he chose to stay, the world began choosing sides.